quickly, what you've just witnessed is the first part of our program and what is a very short but meaningful visit for the delegation from New Zealand to mark the 60th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Friendship between Samoa and New Zealand. I'm very pleased to be joined by a delegation that represents every party in Parliament. And I think that's particularly important, given of course it was a national government at the time the Treaty of Friendship was signed, and we've had successive governments make sure that they are marking what is an incredibly important milestone for our nations and the progress of our nation's relationship as well. We've had here a traditional Ava ceremony. We have now the reception, meetings with the head of state, and importantly tomorrow, not just a bilateral meeting between myself and Prime Minister Whiame Mataafa, but we also have a cabinet meeting which all the parliamentary delegates will be joining that cabinet meeting to discuss the work that we can do together in the face of challenges such as climate change, COVID-19 recovery, and an increasingly contested region. This is a very important visit for us, albeit a quick one.
How significant is Samoa and New Zealand's relationship, and particularly looking at kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Look, you know, as with any relationship, there are, of course, elements of our relationship and our history we have to acknowledge there were things that we have apologised for as a nation. But our relationship with Samoa is unique. The Treaty of Friendship is unique. And you can hear from the comments made today and even the opening ceremony that there's an appreciation that our relationship has matured. It's continued to acknowledge where the past has created wounds, but it looks very much to look forward. And you can hear that in the rhetoric today.
Does the election of Whiame Mataafa create opportunities for New Zealand?
Well, look, I'd like to say that we had an enduring and strong relationship as well with the previous government. But you can see an absolute focus as well of the Prime Minister on issues that we care deeply about supporting the Pacific with, and that includes, for instance, climate change. I believe that will be a significant part of our conversations tomorrow.
Prime Minister, can you just talk us through a bit more about that result we could see after that sit down and then that cabinet meeting? What could we expect to see come out of it?
This will be an opportunity for us to talk about our joint priorities. New Zealand has already said that we want to increase the amount of support that we're providing within the region on initiatives that will support the resilience of our region, and that is climate change. Samoa have said that is a huge priority for them as a government. We're looking to work together.
We see something.
So we'll give a little specificity tomorrow.
Samoa's also opening its borders today for the first time in 2 years since the start of the pandemic. Pretty big day for Samoa.
Quite meaningful that we're here for the anniversary of the Treaty of Friendship, and we also happen to be the first international arrival on this, the first official day of the reopening of Samoa's borders. Here again, we want to reiterate that we're here to support Samoa in its ongoing work on COVID-19 as we all continue to manage this pandemic.
New Zealand set up its climate fund and then portioned about 50% of that for the Pacific. Can we expect money from that fund tomorrow for Samoa?
Well, we have said this is a priority for both our governments, so we are looking to see how we can build on that commitment.
Tourism had been huge pre-pandemic, and it's been 2.5 years with no tourism. What can New Zealand do there to help the economic recovery?
Well, look, you've seen that New Zealanders, yes, they continue to enjoy New Zealand, but after 2.5 years, they are looking within the region. You see as Fiji and the Cook Islands have reopened that there's big interest there, and I'm sure that likewise you'll see the same with Samoa. Our job is, as a government, that people-to-people work that we can do, kicking off again the education exchanges that we had, the scholarships that New Zealand previously provided, making sure where there are skills exchanges that we're taking up those opportunities through, for instance, PACER Plus, the training we've previously done with the police. There's a large number of people-to-people exchanges that we can now resume and that we're very keen to.
You talked about the bipartisanship of this trip. How significant is the involvement of those other parties being here and being involved with some of the events today and tomorrow?
I'm really pleased that all parties in Parliament took up the offer to be represented here today. I think it speaks to the fact that this is a relationship that is not based on political party. It's based on two nations' history and commitment to one another.
Pretty significant nursing announcement today as well. Was it too little, too late?
Oh, no, this builds on initiatives that we've already undertaken. Of course, as you know, we've been working to support nurses with the cost domestically of coming back into the workforce if they choose to. We've already had an international recruitment campaign. But while we've been undertaking that work, in some specific countries, some nurses face greater costs to be recognised for their training in New Zealand than others. One of the initiatives is about removing that cost because we're looking to take away any barriers to helping to increase our workforce domestically and internationally.
For the Samoan community in New Zealand, why is it important to see members of their community on your delegation?
Oh, well, maybe I should have one of the ministers respond to that. Any takers?
Oh, look, I think our Samoan population in New Zealand is over 200,000. That's more than the Samoan population here. And our linkages back to the islands are never ceasing. You know, our interest as Pacific peoples in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is that we're always looking to the islands because of our ancestral homes. Those connections and those bonds are important to us. And today it's not just Carmel and myself and Dr. Nehru, one of our newest MPs, but we've also got a delegation of iwi leaders who are connected to the Samoan communities in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and church leaders who are based in Samoa. That just shows the sign of the dynamic and growing, powerful love that's growing between the two nations.
You'll hear me speak a little bit tonight as well about that. For instance, I mean, we have connections in our parliament. One of our newest is, as Peter has said, is Dr. Anai Nero Leavasa, whose very close relation was part of the Mau movement, who lost his life during the independence campaign for Samoa. You know, now he represents the people in our parliament, but he maintains those strong connections to Samoa. I think that's a demonstration of those people-to-people connections and how closely linked we are.
You've caught up a couple of times with Whiāmi Mataafa over the last couple of weeks and months. What does tomorrow's sort of quick catch-up look like? Does it kind of go straight down to business? Because
it's an ongoing conversation. There are a couple of things that I'd actually like to follow up on from our last conversation when she was in New Zealand. And so I've done a little follow-up on a couple of items and I'll be checking back in on those. And so as is the case with leaders that you've met several times, these aren't new conversations. It's where can we go to next on the initiatives we've already said that we're interested in working together on.
Other than climate change, what are those? Other than climate change?
Oh, look, there's a number. I prefer, if I may, just to canvass them with the Prime Minister before I canvass them publicly, but happy to update you on those afterwards.
On the health announcement, do you think 10,000...
On the, sorry?
Oh, the nursing announcement today. The 10,000 one-off payment will be enough when Australia pays more, just in salaries?
Yeah. Well, look, we need to take into account the full package here. There's a lot of international recruitment going on right now. Having canvassed some of the other countries' international recruitment campaigns, New Zealand offers real simplicity. If you choose to come and be a nurse in New Zealand, then you can become a permanent resident. It's nice and clear. We also, of course, have increased the salaries for our senior nurses by over 20%. And of course, we know that the more that we increase our staffing, the better working environment we can create. And that's ultimately what we want for our nurses. We want safer, better conditions. And that's why we're growing our nursing workforce.
Have you been surprised how many people, Kiwis based offshore, have got the IRD's cost of living payment?
Who have got
the cost of living payment?
Well, look, of course, one of the issues is that this cost of living payment, 2.1 million New Zealanders are eligible for it. Now, the only way to make sure that we're reaching as many people as we can is to automate the process rather than make it application-based. Look, there will be some individuals who don't tell us or haven't told us that they're not resident in New Zealand. And so I can't give you a number for how many that is because, as I say, they have not told IRD they're not resident in New Zealand. But they are a minority. The vast majority are those middle and low income earners who deserve and need and will be provided with the support from this cost of living payment.
Prime Minister, it's not so long ago that Samoa had a contested election and a constitutional crisis for a time. The way that it navigated through that period, what does that say about the maturity of Samoan democracy and Whiāmi's leadership?
I think it speaks for itself. And all the way through when we were questioned on the process. We kept coming back to the importance of relying on the court system, the judiciary, the electoral processes, and that's exactly what occurred. It stood up to what in any democracy is a significant test.
You spoke earlier about a
I'll
relationship.
make this the last one.
You spoke earlier about a relationship maturing over time. Do you feel like a relationship has also specifically matured since Whiane Ngata Awha started in the role?
Oh, as I say, I think with any stage, as each year goes by, I think there'll be an added layer to our relationship. The goal for us is to make sure that occurs regardless of who's in leadership at the time, and that's why it's so important that we're all here from across Parliament.
How was the carver?
Oh, so I'll let you.
We're obviously here for the 60th anniversary of the Samoa Treaty, but what do you think our respective forefathers, Kiwi and Samoan, would have felt like knowing that two women are leading their respective nations?
Well, I would hope that they would collectively be proud of their daughters. Thank you, everyone.